They contain 40% of the world's fresh water. The tallest mountains on Earth, home to 55,000 glaciers, source to 7 of Asia's greatest rivers. But our most precious resource is disappearing one drop at a time.
What's happening in the Himalayan glaciers is incredibly complex. Most glaciers appear to be melting.
The people of Asia face an uncertain future. From Nepal to the Tibetan Plateau, Bhutan to India and the Bay of Bengal, their way of life is under threat. The climate is changing, and life as we know it, from the mountains to sea, is falling out of balance. Glacial lakes reach critical capacity and burst. Droughts threaten once lush farmlands. Weather patterns become unpredictable. Thousands of miles downstream, sea levels rise, forcing coastal villages from their farmlands and into crowded inner cities.
I think we had never a phenomenon where what is happening in the glaciers and in the downstream area is so closely linked.
The Himalayas are the water towers of Asia. When the water tower dries out and 2 billion people don't have water to drink anymore, to irrigate their farms, to run industry, then there's going to be serious problems.
This is going to change the entire eco-balance of at least 9 or 10 major river systems.
There's a question about whether we're going through a period of global warming, and I don't think it's important. What is important is that the environment is changing, that climate is changing.
This is a wake-up call, and we still have time to do something about it. We just need to hear this alarm.
The people of Asia are answering the call, harnessing determination, spirituality, and science to adapt and survive in the face of a Himalayan meltdown. The mountain glaciers that sit high in the Himalayas are the lifeblood of Asia. The glaciers span an enormous geographic region, from Pakistan through India, Nepal, Bhutan, Bangladesh, and China. They are the source of water for some of the world's great rivers. The Indus, Ganges, Mekong, Yangtze, and Yellow rivers all flow from the Himalayan mountains to the seas of Asia. The close link between mountain and sea is readily apparent when you stand on Mount Everest, the world's highest peak. While summiting Mount Everest for the second time, mountaineer Dava Stephen Sherpa realized that the ice and glaciers were disappearing right before his eyes.
This is a treasure for us, but it is also a vital necessity for billions of people who depend upon these glaciers for water.
When I first climbed in 2007, I saw firsthand myself how badly the ice was melting. The glaciers were melting, the seracs were melting, the slopes were melting, so causing more avalanches, more rock falls. Something has to be done about it because billions of people all around the Himalayas are facing danger as their very vital source of water slowly disappears.
When mountaineers first explored the Himalayas, their photos showed spectacular glacial fields. Austrian cartographer Erwin Schneider was among the first of the so-called climber scientists. His photos are not only a window to the past, but are also an important tool for scientists who are studying the glaciers today.
Look over there, you see the photo point?
Almost 60 years after Schneider captured these stunning images, Dr. Alton Byers has returned to precisely the same photo points to document changes in the glaciers.
When you look at the photographs of Himalayan glaciers taken in the 1920s and compare those with photographs taken in the 1950s, and then compare those with the ones that I've taken recently, the changes are both dramatic as well as compelling.
Nowhere is the change more dramatic than Nepal's Khumbu Valley, which leads to Mount Everest. Schneider's 1953 photo of the valley shows ice fields as low as 4,000 meters. When paired with a contemporary photograph, you can see greatly diminished glacial fields. Even more troubling is the formation of a massive glacial lake formed from the glacier's meltwater. The photo comparisons tell us what scientists already know, that 65% of the Himalayan glaciers are receding.
People may dispute the causes of climate change, but there's clearly no dispute that climate change is happening, and there's no better indicator to illustrate this than glaciers. It's going to mean change. It's going to mean changes in water supply. It'll be changes in weather patterns, and people are going to have to think much more seriously about adaptation.
The dramatic change in climate, rainfall patterns, and the glaciers are forcing mountain communities throughout the Himalayas to adapt. Here in Nepal's Khumbu Valley, thousands of trekkers make their way through the tiny villages, largely unaware of these dramatic shifts in the environment. The people of Dingboshe, however, know better. The village sits at 3,900 meters and is just a 2-day hike from the Mount Everest base camp. Sonam Ishi Sherpa runs a small hotel and has lived beneath towering Everest for his entire life. He has seen many changes, but one in particular keeps him awake at night. Lake Imja lies just above Dingboshe, and while it might appear to be a beautiful sight to the trekkers, it is a constant reminder to villagers of a potential disaster.
I remember when Imja Lake was very small, but it keeps growing every year, and I'm very afraid that it will burst.
Dingboshe's location along the river puts it squarely in the path of a massive wall of water if this earthen dam breaks apart. In Kathmandu, computer models at the International Center for Mountain Development are alerting scientists to a disturbing increase in the number of potentially deadly glacial lakes like Imja.
People are very much worried about those lakes, and they don't know when and how it will breach out. It will destroy their valleys, villages, and infrastructure, settlement, and people and other cattle will be washed away.
Imja is surrounded by peaks as high as 8,000 meters. Avalanches and earthquakes are common here, and the force from either could send a shockwave through Lake Imja, causing a glacial lake outburst flood.
And this will bring down the huge debris, like the debris size of 20-meter boulders, 50-meter boulders sometimes, and a lot of silt and sands and all this mud coming down. It will just cover the land, and you cannot recover it for generations. People lost their livelihood forever sometime.
I'm not worried so much about myself. I've survived the Gulf before. But I'm scared for my community. All of the settlements around here are along the riverbed. A glacial flood would devastate the entire river valley.
Before 1960, Imja Lake did not exist. But today it is filled with water from the melting glacier. It is just over 100 meters deep and 2 kilometers long. Just one of thousands of recently formed lakes spread throughout the Himalayas.
We mapped the glacial lake of the whole Himalaya, right from Amudari Basin in Afghanistan to the Irrawaddy Basin in Myanmar. We have mapped slightly more than 20,000 glacial lakes, and out of it, 200 we need a special attention at the moment.
Nepal's largest lake created by meltwater is Sorolpa. Like Imja, it is an alarming new body of water that is a growing threat to the safety of downstream villages. Glaciologist Koji Fujita of Japan's Nagoya University hopes that science can provide a solution. He and his research team are gathering scientific data that may lead to answers about the glaciers and perhaps replace fear with information.
Through our research, we hope to determine how much water is stored in these glaciers. Because if you know how much water is available and how fast the glacier is retreating, you can plan for the future. It's a lot like knowing how much money you have in the bank.
Obtaining information about the health of the glaciers is not easy. Fujita's team is placing remote sensors on Sorolpa that will provide data that can be analyzed by scientists all over the world.
We need to measure, we need to monitor, we need to model. And we need to understand what is happening to the Himalayan glacier, what is happening to the health of the Himalayan glacier. But we don't have to wait for perfect science in order to prepare people.
Climate change is not only creating a perilous surplus of water, it is bringing drought conditions. Many mountain communities have seen the seasonal monsoon rains all but disappear. And with nearby glacial meltwater drying up, one village is harnessing something that is in ample supply here. The heavy fog surrounding Elam, Nepal contains more than enough drinking water for 3,000 villagers during the dry months. To convert the fog into water, the people of Elam use a series of inexpensive mesh nets to trap the moisture from the fog. As the moisture soaks into the nets, water begins to trickle into a basin. Gravity then carries the fresh water to convenient spigots located throughout the village, saving the people of Elam a 2-hour trek to the nearest river. The fog-catching nets are just one of many solutions helping over 200 million Asian citizens adapt to the Himalayan meltdown. The Kingdom of Bhutan lies at the southern tip of the Tibetan Plateau. Until the 1970s, the borders of this Buddhist country were closed to outsiders, helping to preserve their traditions amid the swirl of a modern and industrialized world. For centuries, the Bhutanese, like their Tibetan and Nepalese neighbors, have lived off the land. Farmers and herders are all sustained by the glacial waters, which the locals refer to as white gold. Bhutan, like most other countries within the Hindu Kush region, is harnessing the meltwater to create hydroelectricity, which generates much-needed energy and revenue for the kingdom. But the very same glacial meltwater that sustains the kingdom is threatening to destroy the villages and farmlands that line its rivers. The Himalayan meltdown is creating hundreds of high-altitude lakes which contain massive amounts of water. At any moment, an earthquake or avalanche could trigger a glacial lake outburst flood, obliterating all in its path. It is among the most feared natural disasters throughout the Himalayas. This rare footage shows a glacial lake outburst flood ripping through the village of Punaha in 1994. 21 people died, a year's worth of crops destroyed.
I lived here when the lake burst in 1994. I saw people picked up by the water and carried away. Yaks and horses were washed away. Even today, I don't like to go near the river because I'm very afraid of another glof happening.
Karma lives with her elderly mother and one daughter, just meters from the edge of the Pho Chu River. She was born here and narrowly survived the 1994 glacial flood. She lives in constant fear that another may strike.
When it comes to myself, I may be able to run away. But I worry for my elderly relatives who may not be able to escape immediately.
The 1994 glof originated high in the mountains, where the glacial lakes are rising at an alarming rate. There are more than 2,600 glacial lakes in Bhutan. This one, just above the village of Lunana, is among the most dangerous. Lake Tortomi is now a moonscape of rocks, sand and mud, and is gradually filling with meltwater. By contrast, the adjacent Lake Rapstring is a fully formed lake 100 meters deep. Separating the two is an unstable 35-meter moraine wall of sediment deposited by the melting glacier. As lake levels rise from the melting glaciers, so does the pressure on this precarious dam. If Lake Tortomi ultimately overtops the earthen wall, a superglacial lake with 53 million cubic meters of water could burst, causing a flood 3 times the size of the one in 1994.
Like during 1994 glof, when 18 million cubic meters of water was released, now we are talking about 53 million cubic meters of water to be released if the worst case scenario occurs in the future.
As a matter of national urgency, the Bhutanese government, with assistance from an international climate change adaptation fund that was established by the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change and partner organizations such as the United Nations Development Programme, the Global Environment Facility, the World Wildlife Fund, and the government of Austria, has launched an ambitious project to prevent another disaster. The fight to save their country from a glacial flood begins promptly at 7:45 a.m. at this base camp near Lake Tortomi. 350 men and women have traveled 9 days through treacherous mountains for the opportunity to work on one of the kingdom's most important and ambitious projects. Because of the high altitude and the risk of avalanches, heavy machines cannot be used, so workers are equipped with only hand tools. They work with a sense of urgency to remove boulders and debris. They are in a race against time to clear a channel that they hope will drain Lake Tortomi by 5 meters.
Basically in here we are talking about the hydrostatic pressure that is built as the ice starts to melt and then the water level rises. So basically we are releasing the pressure.
We'll try to remove all the soil and then now we are going to let out the water from there.
Lake Tortomi sits at 4,300 meters. The air is thin and the work is dangerous and difficult.
You can very well see over here that we have to work with these big boulders which are very loose. The water is very cold, maybe 1 to 2 degrees centigrade.
Here, the quest to contain the Himalayan meltdown provides economic opportunity for stalwart laborers. It is well worth the effort for workers like Shem Doji Doya, who trekked 14 days in the hopes of making enough money to start a new life.
With the money that I earn from working here, I plan to open a small store so that I can support my family.
This worker, who has a single name of Zam, says although the work is hard, she is grateful to have a job.
I came from across Bhutan. My husband passed away quite a while ago, but this is the first time that I have been able to support my family. I'm so grateful to have this job.
To implement such kind of project in such kind of places like Lunana at this altitude is very, very difficult.
Slope the 1:2 name babda.
Project planners struggle to supply the workforce with food and tools in this remote and rugged location. In addition to the 300 workers at Tortomi, another 200 local herdsmen were employed to transport the 60 tons of supplies to the site. The team considered using helicopters, but the terrain and unpredictable weather made it impossible. Using skilled yak and horse herders was not only more reliable, but provided significant social and economic benefits. Tsering Geltsen and his team of horses have carried 106 loads of supplies from the town of Gasa to Lake Tortomi. Like many horsemen, he has no formal education.
I'm very happy. With this money, I will buy another horse so that I can make even more money.
He has returned home after an entire summer of leading his horses to the project site. The money will sustain Geltsen's family for an entire year. The money that the horsemen and women have earned during the 3-year project will buy food, shelter and education for their children. It may also buy something else for their country. Precious time to prevent a deadly glacial flood.
A very important project for Bhutan, not only for our department, it's for the country.
If my project succeeds, the life of humans are saved, so that is a pride which I have.
The Bhutanese are now installing early warning systems along the rivers, ensuring that both its people and critical infrastructure are prepared for a glacial flood.
In the Himalayas, I think this is the first time that such work is being done, and then quite a lot of the countries like Nepal, Pakistan, India, they are all observing us how we are doing and how successful we will be.
Next summer, the Lunana Bell will once again call the workers to one of the most challenging climate-changing adaptation projects in the world. This bell is also a call to action for Bhutan and a signal to the world of what can be accomplished when a committed nation adapts to the Himalayan meltdown. Nowhere is water more critical than in the arid high desert mountain communities throughout the Hindu Kush. The village of Leh sits at 3,500 meters in northern India. The windswept area is all too familiar with the unpredictable hazards that come with the Himalayan meltdown. It is a world of extremes. Floods, mudslides and droughts besiege this area mercilessly. Glaciers are receding and weather patterns are shifting unpredictably.
Rainfall is failing, or when rainfall comes, there is flooding. There's a lot of extreme events taking place with alarming frequency, so people are worried.
August 2010. A cloudburst erupts over Leh, sending a wall of mud and water through the city in the middle of the night. By daybreak, 179 people were dead, including the sister of 12-year-old Skalzan Gagmo.
The mud and water swept into our house. It pushed my mother and me outside. I called out to my sister and tried to grab her, but she slipped through my fingers. It was the last time I saw her.